All right, welcome to this coaching session. I'm your host, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com. And today we're going to take a look at PodBean. It seems like an okay solution. It is, it lures in many a person because they do have a free option. And it looks like you get all this stuff. But obviously you have a limited number of bandwidth. So if you get popular, your show gets shut down. So that's why they then get you to go to this. And if you're not careful, they will submit your podcast to iTunes. Be very, very careful with that because that means you'll have a hard time leaving them. But you can see where pricing-wise, they seem rather cheap. It's $2.50 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month. And you can see here where you get, especially when you get into the $5 and $10 package, that you get 300 megabytes of storage, and then it increases every month by 150 megs. So you basically get unlimited storage, and it looks like unmetered bandwidth. And for that is true. Compare this to, say, Libsyn or Blueberry, which are the two hosts I do recommend. I do not recommend PodBean, and I will explain why here. If I go over here, well, first of all, let's look at their stats. So here, I've actually used them for about a month, and I always do this just to try and look at things. And this is their stats. So here you can see over the last 7 days, if I look at my latest podcast and I say, show me all time, I can see that podcast has been downloaded basically 150 times and another 35 or so. Total 190 hits. If I click here, I can see kind of where they came from, iTunes, but nothing too specific here. So, and if I want to compare this to other, I have to say, well, let's look at this and compare it to, let's say, this one from June. And now it gives me, here again, this one has only been downloaded 57 times, and I can look at the last 50 places where things came from. And if I wanted to add another file, let's go the one previous. You can see where this gets kind of tedious. In fact, we're just back down to, so I can only look at 2 files at a time. I can only see kind of their IP address. I can't really see. And you can see if I want more stats, I got to go to a business account. Now, if we go back to the business account, and here is their business package. And you can see you've got all this bandwidth and things like that. You're looking at $70 a month for decent stats, where when you do the personal, yes, you can see how many downloads you have. And yes, it's $5 or $10. But the other thing I want to point out is if we go back into my back end, here we go. One of the things you can get into is you can actually have advertising on your show. So if I do this, I've opted in for this, and you can see I've had a couple downloads here that had advertising in them. You can see I'm not making any kind of any kind of money here. And let me play you a quick snippet. If I go over to the website.
Do you want to advertise on this podcast? Go to PodBean.com now. For only $1, you can get 1,000 listens. You can also predefine geographic locations and categories for where your advertisement will run. Start using the most cost-effective advertising campaign now. Go to PodBean.com. That's PodBean.com.
And then it actually starts the podcast. Now, what's interesting about that is I can come into my back end here, the dashboard, I guess you should say, and I can say, well, I could direct people to this page and they could sponsor my podcast. So you can see here that they can say how much they bid, and they can select an MP3 file. That would be the file they put into my podcast, and you can see it has to be at 128. So if you do plan on doing any kind of advertising, you have to publish at 128, which means, of course, you're going to need more storage, means you have to pay them more. But just realize that even though I did sign up and I said that, hey, go ahead and say that I'm available for sponsorship, I didn't know they were going to do that. So just go in with your eyes open that, hey, they're going to put a disclaimer that, hey, do you want a podcast? Do you want to advertise on this podcast? So the thing I wanted to point out is that, A, you have to be very careful because they will put a link on your website that will link to they will put you into iTunes without giving you any kind of iTunes love. You won't get any credit for that subscriber, and you'll get hooked into where they own your RSS feed. So it's another reason why I'm not a huge fan of their service, and the fact that when you go into statistics, like if I go into, I can see how many downloads I have. And when you see things like site visitors, this is talking about not your website, but their website, like your podcast on their website. If I go here, I can see how many number of hits people have done for my version of my website on their website. So you can see there's not much traffic here. So now let me show you some real stats. Here are some stats from Libsyn, and you can get a free month at Libsyn by putting in the coupon code SOPFREE. That's SOPFREE. Here you can see I can compare a bunch of my last episodes. I can come down and see what countries are listening, what region they are listening from, what U.S. market. I can see what kind of computer they're using. Is it iTunes? Is it Zune? Are they using the Chrome? Pocket Cast is a very popular app for the iPhone. I can see where my traffic is coming from. I can see my daily totals. I can see my weekly totals, and I can see my monthly totals. And I can actually go into, let me pick my last episode here, and I can get that kind of information on a per episode basis or an all-in-one. So here again, you can see here that 43% of the people are listening on iTunes. I can see a map of where my people are. That's a very brief look at Libsyn stats. And here's a really brief look at Blueberry stats. Kind of the same thing. Total number of downloads, total number of downloads per episode. I can get a month-to-month look, a day-to-day. I can see distribution of how people are consuming my podcast, what kind of platforms they're on. Clients here again, iTunes, geography, based of the world, in just the U.S., how people are getting to my podcast, and what domains they are finding my information on. And I could browse my episodes here again and see each one, what kind of downloads they're getting per episode. So that again, this is Blueberry. And if we look at the pricing for Blueberry, you can see here that you can get 100 megs for $12 a month or 250 megs for $20 a month. If you go to Libsyn for $250, it's $15 a month. And they both have their pros and cons, but realize that when we looked at PodBean and we looked at their pricing, yes, it was cheaper, but we have seen now where their stats, again, looked like this. And we just saw the other stats. And yeah, for $10 a month, you get you get a gig of space. So you get a little more space, but your stats are horrible. It's just not my favorite place to host files. Like I said, when you go to your website, be very, very careful because they will try they give you the option of, hey, we will put your iTunes subscription in there. You have to do this your own. If you have any questions on that, let me know, because this whole box I did myself. I hand-coded this so that my RSS feed from iTunes went in there, not there. So be very, very careful with that. But I think you can see now why for just a few dollars more, you can have a much better media host through Blueberry or Libsyn.